Like Oath of the Horatii, Grand Odalisque is clearly and evenly lit, with defined contours and impeccably blended brushwork. Unlike Oath, it doesn't show any moral or instructional themes. This is just a nude woman on display for visual pleasure. An odalisque is a concubine in an Eastern harem, and here Ang has played up the exotic nature of this scene. There are plenty of clues to emphasize this: a peacock feather fly whisk, a hookah pipe, richly embroidered textiles, and the turban and jewels worn by the odalisque. In fact, what we see on display is called Orientalism, European artists' fascination with the mysterious and largely imaginary East. This is not the trustworthy document that careful attention to detail suggests, but a constructed myth by Europeans about what they thought the East, which lumped together the Middle East, Far East, and parts of Africa, was through a white, male, colonializing lens. You may also have noticed that the odalisque's anatomy isn't exactly accurate either. The polished expanse of her alabaster-like skin is distracting, but once you look carefully, it's not too long before you realize that something is distinctly off with her proportions. She seems to have too many vertebrae, with a too small head at one end of her backbone and exaggeratedly wide hips at the other. Her arms have been described as strangely boneless, and her left leg rests at an anatomically impossible angle. Again, though, that polished, perfect skin and the seductive look in her eye invite what we can call the male gaze. This subject is on display for visual enjoyment, particularly by men, so much so that we may not even immediately notice the oddness of her anatomy. The second backgrounding ism we discuss in this chapter is romanticism. The romantic here doesn't refer to roses and chocolates, but instead to the mysterious, irrational, and unknown. Romanticism emerges as a reaction to the Enlightenment, the philosophical movement begun in France in the 17th and 18th centuries, which advanced rationality and science over received ideas about society, religion, and politics. This painting by Joseph Wright of Derby celebrates these Enlightenment ideals, elevating the subject to the level of a heroic history painting. Note the size, too, nearly 5 by 7 feet. Here, the characters gaze in awe at an orrery, a contraption that demonstrates the movements of the planets around the sun, which here is represented by a bright lamp that is hidden by the silhouette of the figure in the foreground, but which brightly illuminates the faces of those gathered around it. Wright uses strong light and shadows to make the scene feel even more dramatic and heroic, celebrating not a mythological or biblical scene, but the triumph of science and rational thinking. Romanticism rebelled against understanding the world in purely scientific terms, instead seeking to celebrate the irrational and mysterious, including human emotions and conditions like what was called madness. This print by the Englishman William Blake uses a biblical story to explore this theme. In the Bible, Nebuchadnezzar is a king of Babylon who God causes to go mad for his arrogance, so that he, quote, did eat grass as oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hairs were grown like eagle's feathers, and his nails like birds' claws. Blake captures the hair, the claws, and the irrefutable look of deep disturbance in the former king's eyes. The Spanish painter and printmaker Francisco Goya y Lucientes also evokes mental demons in his etching, The Sleep of Reason Produces Monsters. A figure, perhaps a self-portrait of the artist, seems to sleep at his desk, his head resting on arms folded over his work. Behind him swarm creatures of the night with oversized, terrifying eyes, owls with sharp beaks, crouching cats, flying bats. It is unclear whether they are descending upon and attacking the sleeping figure, springing from his own dreams, or both. On the desk itself is written El sueño de la razón produce monstruos. The sleep of reason produces monsters. The full caption, however, reads, in translation, imagination abandoned by reason produces impossible monsters. United with her, she is the mother of the arts and source of their wonders. This print seems to hint at the darkness possible in humanity, the monsters produced when reason or rationality sleeps. However, we may also understand a celebration of the imagination, that when imagination is united with reason, the result is art and wonder. This is both a warning against superstition and a celebration of the mysterious and unknown. Dreams are a source of inspiration for the Romanticists, as they will be for another, much later movement, Surrealism. In this famous painting, Henri Fuseli, a print of which, as the textbook points out, allegedly hung on the wall of Sigmund Freud, an apparently sleeping woman dressed in white reclines dramatically across a bed as a demon perches on her torso. The demon, who barely emerges along with a wild-eyed black horse from the shadowy background, is what is known as an incubus, an evil spirit believed to torment and even have sexual relations with sleeping women. Here, as in Goya's print, what is celebrated is imagination and the artist's inner vision and creativity, rather than faithful reproduction of earlier art. Both Goya's Sleep of Reason and Blake's Nebuchadnezzar are prints. Watch the videos I've linked from MoMA's Pressure Plus Ink series, and in the final journal entry for Chapter 4, record what you learned about intaglio, relief, and silkscreen processes.